Good morning, everyone. So, yesterday we discussed what is performance testing, what are the goals of performance testing, and types of performance testing, right? So, yesterday was 11th Feb. So, today I'm going to explain types of performance testing in detail, and we'll have one quick assessment. All right. This would be the agenda for today. Right. So, we discussed yesterday what are the different types of performance testing. I explained load testing, soak testing, stress testing, and spike testing. I'll explain this volume testing and all later on. But these are the important types of testing as I explained yesterday. So for every application, we will do this load testing and soak testing mandatory as mandatory things. So depending on the application type, right, depending on the application requirement, we will be doing this stress testing and spike testing and other types of testing, right? So now let's understand like load testing, different types of testing in detail. So load testing is generally simulates the current user load on the system. I already explained yesterday. So load testing is a type of testing that we do with current user load or normal load on the application. I explained this already yesterday, right? So load testing is a type of performance testing which we simulate, where we simulate the current user load on the system or normal user load on the system. When I say system, application, that is nothing but the application, the corresponding application. Clear case? And now load testing is usually done for 1 to 2 hours. That is another important attribute of load testing. And load testing ensures that the application is stable and can handle expected peak load. Right? So this is to make sure that the application is stable while it is handling the expected user load. Right? And load testing is the mandatory test that will be done prior to any other performance test type. So out of all these types of testing, different types of testing, load testing is the mandatory test before we do any other performance test type. Here guys, so this is all about load testing. And coming about soak testing, so we will discuss like how to do load testing and how to decide this and how to ramp up the users, right? We will discuss that later on. What is meant by ramp up and how to ramp up the users and all, we will discuss that later. And why load testing is mandatory before doing any other performance test type, right? We'll discuss all these in the coming up sessions, right? Once we start test, we complete scripting and start test executions, then we will discuss in detail. The next type of testing is soak test or endurance test. So this endurance test is conducted for longer durations based on business hours of the application. So let's understand this. What is meant by business hours of an application? Right? So first of all, load test or soak test or endurance test is long duration test. And what is that long duration? When I say long duration, so we have to quantify it, right? We have to quantify. Quantify means we should speak in terms of numbers, right? So, and that depends on the business hours of the application. Now let's understand what is meant by business hours of the application, right? Suppose if we take some examples like, let's say for example, any net banking application, right? Let's say a bank works from morning 10 o'clock to evening 4 o'clock. Those are the business hours, isn't it? So if you are testing a net banking application for that particular bank, you have to run this soak test for how many hours? 10 to 4 means how many hours is that?
6 hours.
6 hours, right? So 6 hours is the number of business hours for that application. So we have to run a soak test for 6 hours. This is just to make sure that when someone is, sorry guys, not net banking application. So if you take any application which is used by bank employees, okay, not net banking
Official login.
Sorry for that. Yeah. What is that?
We can use it as official login of the employee.
Yes. Yeah. So bank employees use some application, right? For suppose you went to a bank to deposit cash or you went withdraw cash, right? So bank employees use some application.
Example,
they will not use net banking application like us. Remember that.
Example, Finacle, right?
Correct. So yeah, you went through my previous demo sessions or you already know that? May I know who is that who mentioned Finacle?
Yeah, Hari, Kishore. Sir.
Okay. Yeah. So yes, in India, most of the banks use this Finacle application, Finacle core banking solution, and Finacle is a product of Infosys. Okay. So your bank employees will not use net banking application like us, remember, but they will be using a core banking solution like Finacle. Finacle is a product of Infosys. This is a core banking solution which was developed by Infosys, our Infosys. Clear, guys? So they will be using this application. So if you keep that aside, suppose if you are testing this Finacle application, right? If you want to do performance testing for that Finacle application, so you have to generally you will do load test for 1 to 2 hours, and then you should also do endurance test for 6 hours, because 6 hours is the business hours for that application. So what is the objective of doing? Why should we do endurance testing? Is to check the application behavior when it is used continuously for 6 hours, right? So bank employees use that application continuously, right? They have to find out. We have to find out as a performance test engineer. We have to find out how the application behaves if the application is continuously used for 6 hours, isn't it? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Right. And the main objective of doing this endurance testing is to identify performance bottlenecks like memory leaks or connection leaks, memory leaks and connection leaks. I will explain this memory leak, connection leak later on. But for now, remember that each test has a different purpose, right? Load test has a different purpose, soak test has a different purpose. And the purpose of doing soak test is to identify memory leaks and connection leaks.
Yeah, sir. Here, bottleneck means?
Bottleneck means performance issues, if there are any performance issues.
Okay.
Right? So I'll explain this, what is performance bottleneck, what is a memory leak, connection leak later on. Okay. Once we complete testing, right? So then we will go to those concepts. Right? Everyone understood what is the business hours of the application, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Right? So if you take licindia.com, okay. For example, if you take net banking application, the business hours can be more than the Finacle application, right? So net banking application will be used by end users like you and me, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
The business hours of that application will be more than that. Generally, net banking application will be used from, say, for example, morning 8 o'clock to night 10 o'clock, right? So those are the business hours. 8 to 10 o'clock means 4 hours, and then those 10 hours, 14 hours, right? So if you are testing a net banking application, you have to test for at least 14 hours or 16 hours, depending on the application requirement. Suppose, their users, net banking users start using from 6 o'clock. So morning 6 to evening night 10 means 10 plus this 6 hours, isn't it? So you have to do soak test for 16 hours.
15 hours.
Right. So based on the business hours of the application, if you take let's take some more example like LIC India, for example, licindia.com website is there, right? So as an end user, you and me can use like from morning 6 o'clock to 10 o'clock, right? But LIC employees, they will work from 10 to 4. Let's say, for example, 10 to 4 or 10 to 5. So those are the business hours of their application. LIC employees, the application used by LIC employees. Clear case? They will not use licindia.com, but they will be using a desktop application installed on their machine. Right? If you are testing that application, you have to, based on whatever application you are testing and what is the business hours of the application, you will decide this duration, soak test duration. Is everyone clear on this? It can be 4 hours, or it can be 8 hours, or 16 hours, or 1 day, or 3 days. Then how come 1 day and 3 days? Right? Which application will be used continuously for 1 day or 3 days? I mean, which application requires this testing to be done for 1 day or 3 days? 1 day or 2 days or 3 days? Any examples for this?
Application.
What is that?
Retail application.
Retail application
also you will not be using midnight, right? Of course, there may be some
Customer
users using that.
Yes, yeah. Like it's
There
a
may be
like.
some users, there may be some. See, all these examples, net banking and all. I told that we'll take business hours as morning 6 to 10. But some users may be using after 10 o'clock also in the night, right? but we will not. We need not bother about that because there will be very less number of users. Which application will have more number of users throughout the day?
Facebook.
Right. Yes, exactly. So if you consider Facebook or Instagram, these kind of applications, right? So different time zone people will be using that, right? It will be having continuous load on them. These applications will be having continuous load on them. Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Right? So different time zone people will be using that Facebook or Apple.com or Instagram and all this, isn't it? Twitter and all this. Yes or no? So those kind of applications, for those kind of applications, business hours will be around,
Days.
throughout the day. The people will be using throughout the day. Those kind of applications, like we have to do endurance test for 24 hours or like that. 24 hours, or it can be like continuously, it can, they will be used continuously, isn't it? Different time zone people will be using those. So for those kind of applications, we may need to do endurance test for 1 day or 2 days or 3 days. Clear, guys? You understood what is the business hours of an application?
Yes.
Yes.
Right? The next type of testing is stress test. So stress test is done by gradual increase of user load until that application breaks. Right? So the name itself implies what is meant by stress. Right? So stress means beyond the capacity. Right? If you are working beyond the capacity, you feel some stress. Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Right? So stress test here, coming to this stress test. Stress test is the type of testing where we do gradual increase of user load until the application breaks. Right? And the main purpose of stress testing is to identify an application's breaking point. Right? At what point means at what user load the application breaks. Means application breaks means we may see high response times, or we may see start getting errors. Right? If we
Response time maybe increases
beyond the capacity. Right?
Yes, sir.
So response times and error count increases once the breaking point is attained. How do we know that the application breaking point is? Your response times will start increasing, and errors also starts increasing. Then we can identify that the application reached its breaking point. Right? So not all applications require this stress testing. Please remember that. Clear? Are we clear so far? Can we move to the next slide?
Yes, sir.
The next type of test is spike test. So spike test is done by sudden increase in user load beyond expected load for shorter duration. We already discussed this. I gave an overview, high level overview yesterday. Right?
Yes, sir.
Some applications like IRCTC, or when we have IRCTC,
Amazon.
when will we have
Amazon.
sudden surge in the user load on IRCTC?
Tatkal time.
During Tatkal booking time. So when we have,
Big days.
so if we take any
Big
e-commerce applications like
sales.
Flipkart or
Amazon peak when we are having a sale, peak sale.
flash sale or something, right? When we have flash sale or big billion sale, right? Then there will be a sudden increase in the user load, right? That will be for shorter duration, yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Right? So even Tatkal booking, like all the Tatkal booking tickets will be over in first 10 minutes or 15 minutes, right? So after suppose your Tatkal window opens at 10 o'clock, tickets will be over by 10:15 or
10:30
10:20.
or 10:15.
So most of the users, there will be a sudden increase in user load from 10 to 10:15 or 10:20. After that, again, your load becomes normal. Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Right. So for such kind of applications, we have to do spike testing as well. So spike testing can be considered as a subset of stress testing. We'll discuss that later, what is subtest. But you need to understand this one. Spike testing is done by sudden increase in user load beyond expected load for shorter durations. Right? The duration of the spike will be shorter only. Right? Next, isn't it? I explained this IRCTC example for that. What is this shorter duration? Why is it called a shorter duration? When you have a flash sale, right, the product will be over in 5 or 10 minutes. After that, your load will become normal, yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
The next type of testing is volume testing. So volume testing is done to verify response times when there is huge volume of data in the database. Right? let me explain this, this volume testing, which applications require volume testing. Okay, so we'll take some net banking example only. So suppose you are using some net banking application and you daily do some transactions, some fund transfer or bill payment or credit card payment and all this, isn't it? So whenever you make any of these transactions, some records will be added to the database, right?
Yes, sir.
After so let's say for example, after 1 week or 1 month, if you want to see the transactions, right, you will generate an account statement, isn't it? Your application will show mini statement, and you can also download statement for the past 1 month or for past 3 months, right? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
So all those details should be, so if you do a fund transfer or make a payment, all those details should be stored somewhere in the database, right?
Yes.
So in this process, there will be a lot of records getting added to the database, right?
Yes, sir.
And if you take some net banking application or e-commerce application, right? So this volume of records, the volume of records will be increasing gradually in the database, yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Right? And when there is less volume of data, your database server will respond faster. But when there is huge volume of data in the database, it may become slower, right?
Yes.
Right? So for such kind of applications, we do this volume testing where some records will be added to the database for every transaction. Right? We do this volume testing, and I'll explain this how do they actually these banking applications or e-commerce applications, right? They will maintain certain volume of data. Let's say, for example, they'll maintain 1 lakh records in the database. If there are number of records are more than 1 lakh, what they do is they will move the active partition and history partition. Active partition and history partition. Yes. So what they do is, let's say for example, for active partition, they have kept a cutoff of 1 lakh records. Okay. Right. So let's assume that. So I worked in Bank of America where I came to know this. Okay. Till then, I'm not aware of this case. Okay. So only when I worked for Bank of America, a product-based company, so I came to know that this, every application or every database will have something called active partition and history partition, right? And they will maintain a cutoff of some 1 lakh records. In Bank of America, this was the norm. So 1 lakh records only should be there in active partition. If the number of records in the database goes beyond 1 lakh, right? What we used to do is we used to move that excess number of records to history partition. And which records? Not latest records. We should move the old records to the history partition. Right? Older than 3 months or older than 2 months, those records will be moved to history partition, right? So that your active partition will not become, will not be, the volume doesn't increase, because if the number of records increase, right? Suppose if user tries to create a statement, account statement, right? So it will become like it has to fetch from a lot of tables, isn't it? It should fetch the records from a lot of tables, then it will be slower, it becomes slower if the volume of records increases. Clear, guys?
Yes, sir.
Someone is annotating. Let me clear those. I disabled annotation. Right? So I will discuss this concept in detail when we are going for test execution. So when we are going for test execution in load runner, I'll explain this again one more time. So 1 second, let me show you that. Right, as I explained, right? So we'll revisit this, volume testing when we are doing this volume test. We will discuss this history partition and active partition in the database when I am explaining this. When we go to this test executions, and at this point, when we are discussing this slide, I'll cover that test environment row count versus production row count. I'll explain that at that moment. Okay, let me go back to this. So this volume testing is also called as flood testing. Flood testing is done to analyze the system performance by increasing the volume of data in the database. Right? So suppose your application that you are testing a net banking application whose number of records in the database as a cutoff of 1 lakh records, then you should maintain that 1 lakh records. You should populate 1 lakh records in the test environment, and you should do this volume testing, right? So we'll discuss this like later on. Once we complete scripting, right, we will discuss this. Next type of testing is scalability testing. Scalability testing is performed to identify if the application is capable to scale up in terms of user load. If the application is capable of scaling up in terms of user load. Okay, so what does that mean? So say for example, Facebook application has 20 million users now. The average the number of users who are using Facebook is some 20 million users, let's say. So, and they have estimates that by next year they will be having 30 million users, right? So they have to identify, they have to test their application. Facebook should test whether their application is capable of supporting those 10 million users in the next 1 year. Right? If they do that, that is called as scalability testing. Clear, guys? Is this point clear? Is this scalability testing clear? What is meant by scalability testing?
So just once give a repeat of it.
Yeah. You have, sorry, you want me to repeat that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Scalability testing, what is meant by, okay, let me do one thing. So let me, what is scalability? Okay. Scalability meaning in software testing, right? Scalability testing is a non-functional method that ensures performance of a system or network when the user requests are increasing, right? Or you can see, read this definition: testing of a software application to measure its capability to scale up or scale out in terms of any of its non-functional capability. So basically, suppose, see, every year by year, the number of users increase for any application, right? You agree with me?
Yes, sir.
Generally, it will increase. If the application is good, it will increase, right? Of course, if the application is not performing well, it may not increase. But generally, if your application performance is good, or right, so number of users will be increasing day by day, right? For every year, like there will be a huge difference in the user load. Yes or no?
Yes.
So when your user load is increasing, right? So whether your application can scale up or not, means your application can support that increase in the user load or not. To find out that, we do this scalability testing. Is it clear or no? No.
Now it's clear, sir.
Okay. Now the next type of testing is failover testing. So failover testing is used to verify the system's ability to continue day-to-day operations while the processing part is transferred to a backup environment. Let me give some example for this failover testing in our real life, and then I will come to this failover testing in software. Okay. Suppose there is a power failure, or there are power outages in your area, frequent power outages in your area. Then what do you do? You don't have, your building doesn't have a power backup. Let's say, for example, what do you do?
UPS inverter.
You will go for an inverter, right? You will buy an inverter and you will set up the inverter. Yes or no?
Yes.
So then once the technician comes and installs the inverter, right? So you will ask him, so will you wait for, if you want to test whether your inverter is working fine or not, right? Will you wait for the power outage? Will you wait till the power is off?
No.
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 No, right? So what do you do?
We'll
Or
power
what does
off
he
and
do?
we'll check.
What does he do?
We will power off this.
Power off and we'll check.
Right. We'll
Whether it
switch
is
off the
working or
mains power.
Yes.
We'll switch off the mains power and we'll check whether the appliances are working on the inverter or not, isn't it? Whether your lights or fans are working on the backup power or power backup or not. Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Right? You will not wait for a power outage, right? So before making the payment itself, you will ask him to show whether, or he'll check, he'll stop the mains power and he'll check whether the electrical points for which he gave power backup are working or not. Yes or no?
Yes.
So in the same way, in software also, for every main environment, there will be something called backup environment. Okay. What is the purpose of this backup environment is, Suppose, SBI, State Bank of India, if you take a State Bank of India example, State Bank of India has headquarters in Mumbai. State Bank of India has its headquarters in Mumbai. Okay. And last year or so, like there are floods in Mumbai, right?
Yes.
Right. Now, suppose only Mumbai is affected, but the rest of the country is not working. Rest of the country, they are using, net banking application without any, like they want to use seamlessly, right? Users should be continuing their business. Yes or no? There should be continuity of business for rest of the world. Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Right.
sir.
So when there are floods in Mumbai, right? It's possible that there will be power outage there in Mumbai for 1 week or 2 weeks. Yes or no? Maybe
Yes.
their headquarters also will be having power backup, but it will not last longer, right? It will not last for 1 week or 10 days, right? Isn't it? So now when there is power outage in Mumbai, or when there is in US we have like hurricanes, and in Japan we have earthquakes, right? Frequent earthquakes, isn't it? Suppose there is some natural calamity in the headquarters region or where your servers are located and your application is down, the whole business will be impacted, right? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Right?
sir.
So for that, every main environment will have a backup environment. Means every, in addition to the main servers, most of the applications set up a backup environment in some other location. So that if some location is affected by some natural calamities like earthquake or floods and all this, the backup environment will be working. Is it clear what is backup environment and why is it required? Right. So
Yes,
this
sir.
is right. This term is called as continuity of business. Let me bring up your notes. Okay. So even in your if someone is already working, right? So even in your organizations also they do this continuity of business test. Means suppose your project team members are located in Hyderabad across different locations. Let's say Hyderabad and Bangalore. Suppose one location employees are unable to work, right? Let's say for example in Hyderabad there is you remember before Telangana state were formed, we used to have agitations, right? At that time we could not work, we could not go to office and work, right? Yes or no? Right. So one location, employees from one location are unable to work, then generally we'll have this continuity of business tests, right? So they will test whether other location employees are able to take over that work or not seamlessly, right? Those who are working guys, like, did you experience this? What is, you should be knowing what is continuity of business. Yes, please say yes or no. No working
Yes, sir.
employees are there. There are few working employees, right? What we call that, there is a term actually. 1 second. So in the same way, so every application main environment will have a main environment and backup environment in different locations. Okay. Environment in different locations. And how do we do this failover testing is, what we do is just like our inverter example, they start the test. When we do this failover testing, what we do is we start the test, after some time bring down the main environment and bring up the backup environment. Okay. Or bring down the main environment. Backup environment will be always running. We bring down the main environment, just like how we switch off the power, mains power, while testing our power backup, right? So in the same way, the main environment will be stopped, or the servers will be stopped in the main environment, and we will verify whether the backup environment is able to take that load or not. Again, after some time, we will bring up the main environment servers and we complete this failover testing. That's how we do this failover testing. Is it clear, guys? When main environment is down, whether the application is able to continue its day-to-day operations. right? When the main environment is down and the backup environment, your user load is going to backup environment. So to test that, we do this failover testing. Is it clear? Test what is failover testing?
Yes, sir.
All right. Right. So now any queries before we move to assessment?
No, sir.
Okay. Shall we have some quick assessment for today?
Yes.
As I explained yesterday, so I told you I'll show some graphs and I'll ask you to identify what does that graph represents. So basically some interviewers ask like this, they will not show you graphs, they will ask you to draw the graphs. Please remember that. As you are beginners, right, as you are learning now, right, I prepared some graphs and I want you to identify what type of testing is that, right? So observe here before going, observe here on x-axis we have duration or test time, and on y-axis you have virtual users, means user load, right? Now what type of graph does this, what type of test this graph represents?
Load
What
testing,
type of-
sir.
Load test.
Okay, if this is load testing, then what is this one?
This is called
No,
as your
load test, sir. This is
The first
Sorry.
is endurance,
First.
endurance
Ah.
testing.
long
Right.
duration.
So observe here the 5H means
5 hours.
hours.
Endurance
IHS
test.
is
It's an endurance.
soap test.
Endurance test.
Endurance.
Right. So this is
This
1
is
hour.
load test.
Load
Right.
test.
So this graph represents a load test, right? And this graph represents an endurance test.
Test or
Because you can
endurance
see here,
test.
this is for
Because
5
time
hours.
is
5 hours.
Right. And what type of test is this one?
Spike.
The spike
spike
test, sir.
test.
Spike testing.
test.
So what is spike testing? We discussed it just now. Right?
Sudden increase.
What is
Sudden
spike
increase
testing?
in
Sudden
the-
increase in the
increasing
user
in the
load beyond the expected load for shorter duration.
Shorter
period
duration.
of time.
Right. Suppose if you assume that this is your normal load, normal user load, right? This line represents normal user load. So there are two spikes here, one spike here, and again one more spike here, isn't it?
Yes.
There is sudden increase in the user load and for shorter duration, right? So this graph represents a spike test,
Spike test.
isn't it? Next, what type of test is this one? Okay, let me clear the drawings. What type of test is this?
Stress test, sir.
Stress
Stress
test.
testing, because gently we are increasing the load.
Gradual increase of
Right. So that's what we discussed here, right? So in the stress test, that's what we discussed here. Gradual increase of user load until the application breaks.
Application break.
So if you observe this graph, right, we ramped up the users, means we increase the load till here, and this is called as steady state. This is called as steady state. I'll explain that, okay? And then this is again, we are increasing the user load. Observe here on y-axis, we have virtual users, and on x-axis, we have duration.
Time.
So we are gradually increasing the user load, right? So this graph best represents a
Stress testing.
stress test. What does this graph represent?
Volume testing, sir.
Volume testing.
Volume testing, because on
Perfect.
y-axis we have taken data quantity.
Perfect. Yes. So you observe here on y-axis, we took data quantity. Means that is nothing but data volume, right? So the volume is increasing gradually, right? If we are doing the test with the increase in the volume, it's some volume of records on the database, that this is called as volume testing, right? Is everyone clear on this? What are the different types of tests?
Yes,
Very
yes.
important interview question, guys. What are the different types of performance testing? Very, very important interview question. Okay. And also they will ask one more question. What are the types of testing that you are doing in your project? What are the types of performance testing, or what are the performance test types that you are? Performance you are doing in your project. So if you put some e-commerce application and you have to do that, which one? You have to do that endurance test as well. Apart from load test, you have to do endurance test and spike testing or stress testing. Right? Because at some point, during some days, like we will have more than expected user load on the application, isn't it? Right. So to test that, like, of course, when you are doing based on your application, you have to do different. You have to decide what type of testing does your that application require. Yeah, as a we need to suggest as a performance test engineer, we only need to suggest to the client that your application requires these types of testing. All right. So let's understand the importance of performance testing. I'll cover this importance of performance and prerequisites for performance testing. Maybe I'll cover this importance of performance testing today, and we'll stop it here for today. Right? What is the importance of performance testing? Okay, so the first and foremost thing is, if your website is not working properly, right? So most users move to the other websites. Most users move away to other websites or applications if response time is more than 5 seconds. So I will explain some examples which I encountered, right? Right. So previously, like 5 years back or so, I used to use Axis Bank. Axis Bank was my salary account. Right, our organization opened our salary account in Axis Bank, right? But before 5 years, right, there used to be one very bad performance issue with Axis Bank. Suppose I want to do some fund transfer or payment, right? I used to generally, like, these OTPs are introduced like around 5 to 10 years back, isn't it? So this Axis Bank OTP used to not come on time. By the time the OTP gets application, and I enter the OTP, application used to say that OTP has expired. So I faced this issue many times. I remember very well that, I have escalated this I have sent a mail to Axis Bank customer care many times with screenshots. Okay? So I started the transaction. Let's say, for example, I started a transaction and I'm waiting for that OTP, right? So, and I had to enter that OTP within 30 seconds, but I used to get OTP very late, right? For some reason, it may be issue at a mobile from the third-party application. They may be using some third-party application to generate the OTP, and the issue may be at third-party. They are not sending OTP immediately, right? So, however, like, for me, the transaction is failing most of the times because I'm not getting OTP immediately. So then I switched it from Axis Bank to Kotak Mahindra Bank. I immediately changed my salary account from Axis Bank to Kotak Mahindra Bank, right? So in that way, assume like how many users might have switched to some other bank. Everyone need not go for same bank, right? So users will be switching to other banks or other applications. Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Right? So if you are using some application like, and also I remember this IRCTC very well. Of course, like you may be having very good experience from the beginning, but IRCTC I remember very well. In around 2005 or so, I started using IRCTC. Till 2010 or so, I used IRCTC, and the performance used to be very horrible, right? If I want to book a ticket, right, it used to fail at some point, whether it entering the passenger details or making payment. It used to fail, and we used to see page can't be displayed when I'm trying to book a ticket, right? Then I switched it to some other application, like we used to go to some other application like Clear Trip or Make My Trip, right? After facing these issues multiple times, right? So user will switch away to other applications if the application performance, if our application performance is not good. Yes or no? Right? So that's what I explained here. Most users move to some other websites. Most users move away to other websites or applications if the response time is more than 5 seconds. Means if the application response time is more than, of course, nowadays the expected response time is 3 seconds now. Previously, when I say previously, when I started my career in performance testing, response time SLA used to be 8 seconds. Okay. Later on, it came to 5 seconds. Now it is 3 seconds. Your web application response time should be less than 3 seconds. Most of the applications response times expected to be less than 3 or 5 seconds. Okay, why I kept 5 seconds here is there may be some applications, there may be some transactions like account statement generation and all that will not be completed in 2 seconds or 3 seconds. It will take some time. It will take some 5 seconds or 10 seconds to generate a statement. Report generation kind of scenarios will still have response time SLAs of 5 seconds or more, right? However, that is not important to understand, but this is important to understand. Most users move away to other websites or applications if response time is more than 5 seconds. Response time is more than the SLAs, right? And there will be 4 to 5 billion business revenue loss due to poor web application performance. Because your web application is not performing well, it's estimated that there are some estimates that there will be around $4 to $5 billion revenue loss, right? These numbers might have changed now slightly, but there will be a big revenue loss in the business if your web application performance is not good. That's what you need to understand. Yes or no? Because your users are moving to, when your users move to other websites or applications, obviously you lose that business, right? Is able to follow.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Right. And inadequate performance can adversely impact revenue by up to 10%. There will be an bad impact of at least 10% on the business revenue, right? As per a research done by Aberdeen. Aberdeen is a research organization, and it came up with a number saying that at least 10% of the business will be impacted if your web application performance is not good. Web application or mobile app, whatever it is, right? And business performance begins to suffer at 5 seconds of delay in web application response time and 4 seconds for critical applications, right? So web application response time and 4 seconds for critical applications, some important applications, right? So your business performance begins to suffer when there is a delay in the response time. And any additional second of waiting on a website significantly impacts customer satisfaction and visitor conversion. Any additional second of waiting means, suppose response time SLA is some 3 seconds. Means, suppose you are trying to log into a website. So generally users expect it to be completed in 3 seconds or so. Let's assume any additional second of waiting. Suppose your login is taking 4 seconds or 5 seconds or 6 seconds. So any additional second of waiting impacts the customer satisfaction and visitor conversions, right? And page viewers conversion rate and customer satisfaction drops 11, 7, and 16% respectively. So in this context, I would like to explain, one incident which happened with Flipkart or Amazon previously when there was a big billion sale or freedom sale, right? So both those applications crashed in, of course, this is like around 5 years back, I think, right? So these Flipkart and Amazon crashed when there was a freedom sale or big billion sale. You remember that? And the next day, newspapers highlighted that there is this much, these websites have crashed because of huge user load, and there is a lot of, there is a lot of revenue loss in crores actually, or billions of dollars. You might have known that, right? You might have heard that, yes or no?
Yes, sir. Its price was down for one rupee or 1 paisa only for this. Only for disturbance on this testing.
Not only that, your share value, that company share value also crashes whenever such happens, such things happen, right? So when there was a big billion day sale, Flipkart application crashes, Twitter reacts, right? Let's see this thing. Sorry. Let's see, open the new tab. Okay. How did the Flipkart server crash on big billion sale in spite of blah blah blah? Okay. Let's go through this news, guys, right? So many e-commerce player Flipkart began with its big billion days sale today. Company faced technical glitches and price discrepancies. Flipkart aimed at providing a hassle-free experience. I'm looking for some numbers like what, like how much loss it has caused because of that server crash, right? So see here, Flipkart server crash on a big billion day sale in spite of deploying 1,000 servers, right? So, well, there were 5,000 servers deployed for this event and not 1,000. See here, there are 5,000 servers deployed for that event itself, right? So what all you need to understand is, suppose if your application crashes whenever there is some event like this, right? So there will be a big loss of business revenue as well as reputation. Yes or no? Your reputation also, the company's reputation also falls. And also if they are listed companies, right? Listed company means if it is listed in the stock exchanges, their share price also, their market value also will crash like anything.
Will decreases.
Right. Right. So there will be like 1 second. Bangalore-based companies much hyped one-day flash sale. It went by the hashtag Big Billion Sale, right? And with a large number of people reaching out. I'm looking for some numbers. We got a billion hits on our site today. Achieved a 24-hour sales target with just 1 hour. However, let me I will collect some articles on that and I will discuss. We will discuss in that next session. Okay. So if your website performance is not good, it will not only impact your business revenue, you will lose that user you may lose that user forever, right?
Once the customer satisfaction.
Right. Yeah. Once the customer satisfaction is not good and he moves to other website, it's very difficult to get back that user. Right?
Yes, sir.
So that is the importance of performance testing. So this speaks about the importance of performance testing for any application. Okay. So I'll stop it here, guys, for today, and we'll continue tomorrow. Shall we? Okay, we'll continue on Monday. Okay, tomorrow is Sunday, right? We'll continue on Monday.
Yes, sir.
So for Monday, we'll. So today's session was from 9 to 10, right? Let me update this. On Monday, we'll connect back at the same time, 8:30 to 9:30. Okay. In the next session, I'm going to cover what is waterfall model. No. I want to cover this, what is meant by application architecture and desktop applications. We came across some desktop applications today, right? So we discussed about this Finical application. Actually, Finical application is someone posted, Flipkart apologizes to customers for Big Billion Day sale glitches. Flipkart said on Monday that it took 10 hours to hit its target of 10 million gross merchandise. Okay. Now, this is not the actual exact news that I'm looking for. So at that time, Flipkart and Amazon announced that the amount of losses they incurred because of that server crash. That is the news that I am looking for. Okay. So I'll show that, I should be having some screenshots of that. I'll show that, or else we'll Google that and I'll show that tomorrow in the next session. So on Monday session, I'll be covering what is meant by application architecture and what is this 2-tier versus 3-tier architecture. What is a typical 3-tier architecture and new N-tier architecture. So I'm going to explain these concepts in the next session. Okay.
Yes, sir.
And for recording purpose, thanks for watching. Like, share, subscribe, and if you can. Yes. Let me pass the recording.